we're going to go ahead and hit the Facebook now. Just give me a minute to get that going.
Everybody mute too, except people who are talking.
No. Come on, you.
Just one more minute. It just takes a little bit to set up the Facebook. Okay, it looks like that's good.
Alex, just remind everybody who comes on that they have to stay muted, would you, so we don't have that background noise.
Okay. Or Megan, you can do that because I'm going to go ahead and mute.
Hello all. Just a reminder to please keep your microphone muted unless you have a question and are given the floor to speak. That way it'll minimize the background noise for everybody. By way of background as well, just so everybody understands, we are recording this event via Zoom, and it's also being fed live on Facebook. So you are being recorded as we speak. If you don't wish to be, you are welcome to disconnect and call in by audio. Okay, it is 7:02, so we'll get started if that's okay. I appreciate everybody coming and coming out or going to your computer to listen to the presentation tonight. My name is Megan Harmon. I'm the chairman of the Planning Commission. We have with us, not in any particular order as they see them on the screen, Diane Law, who's also on the Planning Commission, Richard Kelly, who's on the Planning Commission, and Mike Moita, and myself. There's 4 of us currently serving. Unfortunately, this last holiday season, we lost our 5th member, Dick Kirshner, who passed away. If it's okay, I'd like to have a moment of silence in remembrance of him and to thank him for his prior activities with the Churchill Borough and particularly the Planning Commission. Okay, well, thank you all. I guess we will, that started with the call to order. I guess we're going to start immediately with the task at hand, which is to have a presentation from Hillwood. And I believe they are going to put it up on the screen. Is that correct?
Yeah, Tim
Yes.
Pudwell from Hillwood will be, I believe, sharing his screen here momentarily.
Okay. We will have a presentation from them to start off the meeting.
Hi, thank you very much. This is Leif Metz. I'm a real estate lawyer with Buchanan Ingersoll here in Pittsburgh, and we represent Hillwood and have had the pleasure of working on this project with them and with the borough. We're thankful for the Planning Commission for scheduling this meeting this evening. Just a little bit of background before we go through our presentation. So there are 2 things that we have before the Planning Commission this evening. One is a conditional use application application, and the other is a land development plan application. And just as background, this is a proposed distribution facility on the former Westinghouse site. And at the end of last year, in November, the borough adopted an amendment to its zoning ordinance to permit a distribution center as a conditional use in the C1 zoning district, which is where the Westinghouse property is located. And so what that means is that a distribution center is permitted there, subject to the conditions in the borough's ordinance. And so those conditions are a range of things that are designed to ensure that the project doesn't have a negative impact on the borough and its residents. So for example, things like making sure that the traffic is appropriately regulated, and that we've addressed the stormwater runoff and the sound from the facility and the lighting and the air quality. And so the purpose of the meeting tonight is for us at Hillwood to talk through the project and through the various studies that we've submitted to the borough to show how we're proposing to meet each one of those conditions. The land development plan application, which we'll come to secondly, is more focused on the actual building that's proposed to be constructed. So it's a site plan that shows what the dimensions of the building are and where it will be located, and how the land on the site will be graded and where the utilities will be located. So it's more of a technical engineering and design part of the process. And just as further background, so the studies that we have submitted to address those things, like the sound and the air quality and the stormwater, as we were going through the zoning amendment process, we submitted kind of preliminary conceptual studies, and the borough's engineers at Gateway provided review comments to those preliminary studies back in October. That was in connection with the zoning amendment. We subsequently revised all the studies and resubmitted them to address the preliminary comments from the borough's engineers. So we resubmitted those in December along with our application. The borough's engineers at Gateway now have reviewed all of those resubmitted studies, excuse me, and they just provided their comment letter to us yesterday with their additional comments. So for a project of this scale, there are going to be a couple more rounds of evolution of those studies, so that Hillwood, as the developer here, can address the comments that the borough engineers are making. So this is not the last time that we're going to be before Planning Commission. So just to sort of set the stage, the Planning Commission at the end of the meeting, that they'll either approve or deny or table the applications. And from Hillwood's perspective, our expectation is that Planning Commission will table both applications and say, good progress is being made, but further work needs to be done by Hillwood to address the additional comments from the borough engineers. So just so that Planning Commission and residents who may be listening on the Zoom meeting as well understand. So we're not here today expecting that this project is going to be approved this evening. This is a big and complicated project, and so additional work on the engineering and the design is needed. And so what we're anticipating is that we'll be back again in the February Planning Commission meeting, I think the first Wednesday in February, and to see what additional progress we've made, and then we'll see if additional meetings are needed beyond that. So just to set the stage, that's what we're expecting this evening. So I'll turn it over to Tim Pudwell, and we'll run through our slide deck. And as we do that, we have our engineers on the phone, and they'll provide more specifics about the different studies that we're doing, and the types of measures that we're putting in place to address the quality of life issues that the residents will have that are being expressed through Gateway's review. So thank you again for having us this evening, and Tim, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Leif. Appreciate the overview and set the stage for tonight's meeting. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Again, I want to reiterate what Leif said, start off by saying that we're very appreciative of your time tonight and excited to talk to you about the opportunity for redevelopment at the former Westinghouse Research Facility. Start off, give you a little bit about the Hillwood team, our local consultants that are dedicated to this project. It starts with our leadership, which is Gary Frederick and Michael Alderman. Gary and Michael have a combined 40 years of commercial real estate experience, and Gary has been working in the Northeast since 2002. As development director, I lead the day-to-day efforts for the development team. I come with over 15 years of construction and development experience, with the last 6 years focusing on logistical development throughout the Midwest and the Northeast. Most recently working on our 1 million square foot development in Findlay Township that completed in August of 2020. Our construction service team is led by Jim Whitehead. Alongside him is Dwight Lewis, who manages pre-construction for the Northeast. And additionally, we've hired Langen for our engineering and traffic consultants. And as everyone's aware, we have Leif Metz from Buchanan Ingersoll as our local counsel representing us. We've been working on this development for a year and a half now, and throughout this time we've been reaching out to local experts to find out what's important to them and gain their support on the project. To date, we've received positive response back from everyone on this list, and in particular a great deal of support from Governor Wolf, Senator Jay Costa, Allegheny County Exec Rich Fitzgerald, Economic Development Director Lance Chimka, and among others. We spent the time, we've also spent a lot of time informing leadership at the Woodland Hills School District, Blackridge Civic Association, the Port Authority, and PennDOT about the project. We're here tonight to talk about the opportunity located within the Churchill Borough at the former Westinghouse facility. The former Westinghouse facility site has been dormant for approximately 20 years and is considered an environmentally challenged site based on previous operations and its current conditions. What Hill is proposing is a complete redevelopment of the site. The site is approximately 133 acres, large enough to accommodate the proposed 4.5-story, 3.6 million square foot distribution facility. We see this site ideally suited for e-commerce due to its proximity to highway access, labor, and consumer base. Hillwood's commitment on a project like this requires a large investment that only certain types of development can absorb. We're anticipating $300 million in overall project costs. The site up front will require $40 to $50 million in costs, which reflects a combination of the purchase price and the extensive amount of remediation and demolition efforts needed to make the site developable before a shovel goes in the ground. There will also be a large investment in the infrastructure surrounding the site by means of traffic improvements, which Chris Priss from Langen will expand on later in the presentation. And additionally, with this development comes community benefit of 1,000 to 1,500 jobs, with 5% of these positions being technical and managerial positions. At a minimum, starting wages for these positions will be in the mid to high teens. They'll provide a full benefits package day one, along with an educational reimbursement program available to all of its employees. And lastly, this development will provide a considerable increase to the tax base. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Westbrook with Langen, who can give an overview of the site and some of the unique challenges ahead of us to transform it into the state-of-the-art e-commerce facility we are proposing.
Thank you. As mentioned, the proposed distribution center is a redevelopment of the site. The existing buildings on site are proposed to be demolished, remediation performed, and then the site will be prepared for the construction of a proposed distribution center facility. That facility, as shown on the screen, involves an employee parking lot on the north side and the loading on the south and east sides of the building. Access will be provided from Beulah Road on the northeast side of the site, from a new slip off ramp from the Parkway East into the site on the northwest side, and a driveway located near the existing Westinghouse driveway on Greensburg Pike. Stormwater detention will be provided via above ground ponds as well as underground pipe network to slowly release the water back to downstream, and it's at the same time being treated for water quality through filtration. Later on in the presentation, we can be happy to mention some points regarding lighting, the sound study that has been performed, as well as an air quality study that's underway.
All right, thanks, Chris. Moving through the slides, next couple slides just give you a zoomed in perspective of what the site plan looks like. This here is the northeast quadrant of the site with Parkway in the back here. And one thing to highlight here is the proposed slip ramp coming off 79A that will feed directly into the facility. Again, just want to give you just a little snapshot of what the before and after views that we're proposing. Right now, again, looking in from that northeast quadrant off the Parkway, we're proposing a full landscape package that when you're looking in from the Parkway, when we're done with the development, you're going to see a lot more greenery than building. So just trying to show in relation to where the site sits in relation to the Parkway and how much building you're actually seeing. As the building sits fairly low on the site. Over here is just a northwest corner of the facility. Just a couple things to highlight here is, and Chris will get into this more, but the proposed traffic circle along William Penn and Beulah, as well as this is the road that connects to the slip ramp that I showed a couple slides back, and this is going to be a public road that ties in from the Greensburg Pike to Beulah Road. And again, just a snapshot of before and after, kind of trying to highlight the landscape and what you really see from a street view looking into the campus. When looking at the schedule for this project, we're looking at Q2 of 2021 to start demolition. So we're not far off, or a few months away from where we want to start doing some of the remediation of the buildings and get the demolition rolling. Q1 of 22, we want to start our site and vertical construction improvements, which is a 15-month build process. Q2 of 22, we want to get going on the offsite improvements. And in Q3 of 23, we want to have the building completed and turned over to the tenant and be fully occupied. As Leif mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, as part of the conditional use application, we are required to provide a multitude of site-specific studies regarding the site impacts that include sound, lighting, stormwater, traffic, parking analysis, environmental impact analysis, to name a few of the studies that we're going through right now. As of last night, again, as Leif mentioned, we received the first review letter from the borough's engineer, and we're currently in the process of reviewing the comments received. Hillwood and our client are committed to working with the borough to make sure we provide the analysis required to satisfy all concerns and make sure all the required criteria is met to make this a successful development that Churchill can be proud of. In addition to the site-specific engineering analysis we're doing, we'd also like to share a portion of an independent study we performed in regard to Hillwood's impact on home values. Most recently, we commissioned an independent study by Loudon and Associates, and the study was to focus on the developments in Northeast. And within the study, we found that the home values around the developments have consistently increased relative to the greater markets. In this example, we focused on the Kutztown, Manchester, and Carlisle markets. The examples given are developments that completed in late 2015 and 2016. Each example illustrates home values from starting from 2011 pre-development through 2020, which is all post-development by 4 to 5 years. And the range of the study is within 1 to 10 miles of the facilities. What this has shown is that whether you're 1 mile or 10 miles away from the facility, each area has had a steady increase in value. These findings are consistent with what we've seen across the U.S. Throughout our national studies performed within the Hillwood Company. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Prisk, who can highlight some of the traffic improvements and where we're at in the process.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, everybody. But I feel like I've gone through this speech 4 or 5 times now. So for those that are new, I hope it's enlightening. And for those that have to hear me again, I apologize, but hopefully I'm getting better every time I do this. So maybe you'll pick up something different. First off, I guess I just wanted to give a little context to the process that we've undergone. This is over a year ago at this point, we've started the traffic study effort, and we've had 4 rounds of preliminary submissions, 2 full traffic study submissions. There's been input from PennDOT, Allegheny County, Churchill Borough. I've worked on 10 plus of these facility types in the last 2 or 3 years. And this is by far the most heavily scrutinized traffic effort I've been a part of. So hopefully that gives you some confidence as to the level of detail that we're going through, as well as the level of detail of review and input that review agencies are providing. Little background on the end user. There's a few different facility types. One facility type is primarily known for delivery vans, and those are the packages that you kind of receive at your front door, which I think are getting more and more every day as people are staying home. There's another facility type that's primarily focused on truck traffic, heavy truck traffic. And then the third facility type, and again, kind of generalizing for you, is focused more on employee vehicles. And basically it's the big job creator. There is truck traffic that has to serve it, but primarily it's known for just employee traffic, and that's what this facility is. So this one brings in the big jobs, which should be appealing to you guys. The truck traffic in itself is maybe less than 5% of what the whole traffic generated is. As a point of comparison, when we do our standard traffic generation, this facility is projected to generate less traffic than the existing Westinghouse site when it was in its heyday. So obviously it's been vacant for quite some time, so you're going to notice an increase in traffic, but comparatively to what was there, the amount of traffic that's going to be generated would be less than what was existing back then. Maybe go to the next slide if you could. This shows the different intersections that we studied. So each one of these intersections we had to do data collection, perform analyses, and include in our report. And we do a kind of a rating system similar to a school grading system, A, B, C, D, E, and F, to evaluate how things are operating. And we look at the conditions before our development, and then we look at the conditions with our development, and we're required to mitigate any increase in delay that exceeds 10 seconds. And so, you know, if some intersection, because of the amount of traffic that we're adding, has an increase in delay overall of 10 seconds or more, we have to provide some mitigation. And so the mitigation that we're proposing, that Chris Westbrook mentioned, was this direct off-ramp directly into the site. And what that does is it alleviates traffic coming from the city on Parkway East from having to get off on the Greensburg Pike and then going from Greensburg Pike to the site. It can go directly into the site, which is great. And then the other big mitigation that's being proposed is the dual lane roundabout at William Penn and Beulah. As I'm sure you're aware, and it's gotten better with less traffic due to staying at home, but you know that's a heavily congested intersection as it is. And so the dual lane roundabout not only improves the operations from what's currently happening, but it also addresses the impact of additional traffic. And so with those improvements, all of the study area intersections operate at a level of service C or better, which is acceptable. So we're able to address existing issues as well as potential issues with the development and have successful operations. The reason, or one of the primary reasons for the amount of length in this process for the traffic study is not, and I want to make sure I'm clear with this, it's not that people are concerned that the traffic will not work acceptably. It's that the improvements that are recommended, they want to make sure that those improvements can be constructed to reflect the analysis. So the study is showing that the traffic can be, like I said, level service C or better, which is great. But the review agencies are concerned with, can we construct those improvements so that we can achieve those results? And so we're actually going back and forth in a more detailed process, which typically occurs after the traffic study with design plans, kind of showing more detailed levels of design plans, taking conceptual figures and adding more detail just to get a comfort level that they can be constructed. And I think that's probably it for now, and then I'll just hit questions later, Tim, unless there's another slide.
No, Chris, that's it. Thanks. All right, moving forward. Next few slides are a little bit, just Hillwood specific. Give you guys a little, again, like Chris said, those of you that have been through this presentation before, I apologize, but for those who haven't, just give a little background on Hillwood as a national developer. We are, this slide represents Hillwood's business on a national front. We're also active in Europe. Hillwood started in Dallas, Texas, where we're headquartered, and we're still located in Dallas, and has grown from coast to coast, focusing on major population areas and consumer bases for logistics. In the Northeast, as I mentioned when we started, Hillwood's presence in the Northeast is led by Gary Frederick and Michael Alderman, who come with 40 years of experience. Hillwood started in their Northeast logistics business back in 2002, and has since opened up offices in Harrisburg and Allentown. To date, we've completed over 18 million square feet of projects from Virginia through New England. This slide here just represents the Northeast industrial activity in particular. Over the past decade, the e-commerce business has exploded, as many of you know, and the demand for the delivery of goods direct to your home continues to grow, especially in the current times we're faced with the pandemic. This map highlights the projects we've completed and towns we have been active in, with the exclusion of our project that is currently under construction in Findlay Township. Actually, this slide's been updated, and we just completed Westport Chapman in Findlay Township, which was a 1 million square foot distribution center. And this slide, this is an overview of the Westport Chapman distribution center. Again, substantial redevelopment of the former strip mine site. Significant ground remediation work was required. On this development in particular, it was from the $4 to $5 million in just ground improvements that were necessary to stabilize the earth in order to build the facility. Right now, they're 100% operational as of this past August, and they're operating with about 800 full-time employees. And have to report everything's going great. Findlay Township is very happy with the facility, and we are probably about a month away from being 100% closed out there. And this here is Amazon Hartford. It was a former Pratt & Whitney aircraft company plant that opened in 1930. Again, just a good example of a brownfield redevelopment, remediation, and reuse of and with that, that concludes our slide deck for tonight, and happy to open it up.
Thanks, Tim. This is Leif. One other thing I think would be helpful is if we could go back to one of the earlier site plan slides, and Chris Westbrook, if you could just explain to the commission specifics about the different studies that we've done. So stormwater, sound, lighting, and air quality, and some of the measures that we have proposed to take to address those types of concerns. And just to mention too, in particular, with stormwater, we know that that residents in the borough have experienced some flooding issues during heavy rainfalls, and so that's something that's of particular concern to the residents. And also on sound, a comment that we've heard a few times, understandably, is if there are going to be trucks on the site, are we going to be hearing noise from the beeping when trucks are backing up, and how can something like that be mitigated? And I know there are other things you'll be addressing as well, but if you could help explain that, I think that will help give the commission and the residents a better understanding of how we're planning to address the concerns.
Sure, absolutely, Leif. I guess starting with the stormwater, we will be providing stormwater detention measures that will help us hold back the water and basically slow it down and release it at a slower rate than it's currently being released at naturally. So basically, after the development, the peak rates of flow that will be seen going towards the Beulah Road drainage area and also down towards Valiant to the southwest will be reduced. And as mentioned earlier, that's via, I believe, 4 above ground stormwater detention basins. We've added a couple since this rendering was prepared. So those would be look like a pond that would fill with water and then drain down, slowly releasing the water back into the watershed. And then we also have 3 underground pipe network systems under the parking areas. So basically those are collecting the water from the parking lot. We have filters on those. So basically it's filtering the water, and then it is holding it back, and then again slowly releasing it downstream. So we're looking at the current conditions and then comparing it to the proposed conditions and making sure that we're releasing the water slower, so that the rate of water leaving our site is reduced. So basically slowing it down, filtering it, providing water quality. That's kind of the state of the art of what kind of happens on all sites these days. So I think that kind of handles high level stormwater. I'd be happy to answer questions later on certain aspects of it, or allow my team members to jump in if there's specific questions on what devices we're using. Regarding sound, there's no quantitative or numerical noise code that applies, but we have provided a thorough sound study and basically developed that based on the ambient or the background sound levels for the site area. And then as part of that, we've modeled the the building equipment, so the heating and ventilation equipment on the roof of the building, as well as the trucks, the mobile sources moving around the facility. So basically combining those two and analyzing those to come up with what mitigation measures are required. And as you can see on this plan, we're proposing sound barriers along the east side. There's a red line shown parallel to Beulah Road. And then on the west side, behind the residential properties and along the driveway up to Greensburg Pike. So basically, those are going to vary anywhere from 5 to I think as much as 25 feet. The final height will be dependent on, our review and comments from the borough and their sound consultant and establishing the final study. But so approximately 5 to 25 foot high walls. They could be similar to they could have a finish like a faux stone look to them. They could be board on board type fence. So there's several different aesthetic looks that they could have, but generally a solid wall to minimize the sound for the receptors for the folks adjacent to the site. So that study will also be, we've received comments and we'll be addressing and responding to those, and a full study is being, will continue to be completed for sound. Moving on to lighting, we received the comments for lighting as well. We have met the borough code of 0.25 foot candles. That's basically the light level is allowed at the property line. In most areas, I think we exceed that. I think we're at 0 around almost the entire perimeter of the site. We've put shields, house side shields on, so basically shields so that the lights are not providing glare. So you're not looking at like if you have a light bulb in your house and it doesn't have a shade on it, and it kind of provides some glare. So there's shields on the side. So think of it kind of like that it's so you're not looking directly at the light bulb or the fixture. So that provides mitigation for light and glare. And as I mentioned, we provided calculations for the borough's review, and we're continuing to address comments that we just received of a technical nature. So that's high level on the light study. And then lastly, on the air quality, we have developed a protocol for modeling air quality on the site. So that basically is an air emissions model study. So it basically takes all the sources. So that includes mobile sources, cars and trucks on the site and around the study intersections that are in the traffic study surrounding the site, and also takes into account stationary sources. So emergency generator for the building, again, the heating equipment on the roof. So basically all that information is being put into a model. And then mitigation for air quality basically involves limiting idle time to per the regulations for vehicles on site, taking measures during construction to avoid dust to minimize dust leaving the site and getting into the air, and then using obviously efficient equipment for the building, rooftop units that provide heat and cooling to the building. So all those different things are being looked at. A pretty in-depth model, and again, a comprehensive report is going to be provided and reviewed by the borough's consultants for air quality. So I think we're getting close to being on the same page with all the different inputs and areas that need to be studied. It's a pretty comprehensive, as Chris said, for traffic, this is one of the probably the most comprehensive air quality review and analysis that I've personally been involved in on this type of project. So be assured that a lot of effort is going into it, and a lot of technical expertise is being brought to bear to review the air quality impacts and mitigate for those. So I think that's the 4 things I had on my plate. I think the last thing maybe parking, and I think that probably would go to Chris Prisk if he wants to discuss the right sizing of the parking for to avoid being underparked.
Hey, Chris, this is Leif. One thing before we go to parking, could you touch on the mitigation for the backup beeping sound in truck?
Sorry. Yeah, so for the majority of the truck movements in the truck yard are provided by an on-site yard switching truck. So it's basically the drivers that bring the truck to the facility, they leave, and then when the truck needs to be parked in a trailer space away from the loading dock, so the spaces at the far south or page bottom in this truck parking lot, there is a employee that will hook up basically a tug to the trailer and drive it and park it. They can be equipped with it's called technical, I don't know if this is a technical term, but like a shusher, but it's kind of like a white noise device. So instead of the beeping, it has kind of a shush, 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 shush sound that is can be set just above background noise. So it only is as loud as it needs to be, and it is I guess I would just say more of a white noise than beeping. So and that can be provided on the yard trailers that again do the majority of the switching of and movement of vehicles around the truck court to help mitigate that concern.
Thanks, Chris.
Mhm.
Chris Prisk, you want to touch on the parking?
Sure, although I'll try not to get as technical as a shusher. So thanks, Westbrook, for that. Essentially, this user knows its needs, its parking needs. And so there's a typical operations, which are the majority of the year, but then there's a handful of days, which equates to maybe a total of 2 weeks of individual days where it has higher than normal volume. So they have more people that come in, they have more trucks that come in. You can kind of equate it to like the Christmas shopping season at a mall, but that almost makes me laugh now because malls are going defunct. So I'm kind of dating myself, but so there's a maybe up to 14 days a year where they have more of a demand than what they normally need. And so the parking calculations and the demand analysis that we did is based on specifically user information that they provided. And we feel that's a more adequate way to design for this user because it is a very unique user, as opposed to, you can go through a ton of different handbooks and manuals for like a fast food restaurant, right? And it would tell you need 30 parking spaces. But then you also know that there are different types of fast food restaurants. So, what comes to mind is like Chick-fil-A versus a Taco Bell, right? Chick-fil-A is very different than a Taco Bell. So if you just look at normal code, maybe both of those would say they need 30 parking spaces, but you and I both know that the Chick-fil-A is a unique user and has different needs. So this is a user that has different needs, and the parking demand is based specifically on their needs and to accommodate that influx of 14 days a year.
Thank you, Chris. One other condition that I wanted to touch on that's part of the borough's conditional use ordinance is environmentally positive design criteria. And so we know that environmental consciousness is important to the borough and a lot of its residents, and that's important to Hillwood and to our tenant as well. So there are a few specific things that we're doing in that regard. The first is that the roof of the building is constructed to accommodate solar panels to generate electricity, just like the building that we constructed in Findlay Township was similarly constructed. And then our tenant later installs the solar panels on the roof once it moves in and is operational. So that's something that we feel really good about. In addition, the parking field is designed initially to accommodate 10 electric vehicle charging stations. And that number can be expanded as additional electric vehicles become prevalent in the trucking fleet. So that's something that we're trying to facilitate as well. One of the other commitments that Hillwood has made as part of the development is to try to help the Allegheny Land Trust in its efforts to purchase the former Churchill Valley Country Club site, which we know that the Land Trust intends to use as public park and open green space. And so Hillwood has committed to contributing $1.3 million to the Land Trust to try to close their funding gap and make that project a reality. And so that's the type of mitigation effort that we take a lot of pride in, and we think that would be a great amenity for residents of the borough and for the broader region to really preserve that space and have it be just a wonderful amenity for the residents. In addition, the site, as Tim mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is 133 acres, and on the southern portion of the site, there's about a 20-acre portion that is not going to be disturbed as part of the development. So that 20 acres, Hillwood would commit to leaving that as undisturbed open green space. So that'll help to protect some of the flora and fauna on the site and also provide additional stormwater mitigation. The building will be constructed to industry leading energy efficient standards. And lastly, as Chris Westbrook mentioned earlier, part of the stormwater mitigation is going to include filtration, so that the stormwater that is released is going to have been treated to remove phosphorus and nitrogen and some other things that are harmful to the water table. So those are the 6 environmentally positive design criteria that we're anticipating as part of the project. I think that's all I have. Tim, any concluding remarks before we open it to questions?
No, nothing more from me, Leif. Leif, Chris, I appreciate you giving a little bit deeper description of those items. I think it helps quite a bit, and we are happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it, your introduction. Next on the agenda is any comments by the borough engineer or staff, if they want to have an opportunity to speak.
And if I could ask Tim to stop sharing the screen, it might be simpler to do that. And you could refer back to the slides, Tim, as you need to do that. That way we can see kind of who's asking the questions.
Okay.
Megan, if it's helpful, I can put the agenda up. But at this point, I think we were thinking of having the engineer make kind of a presentation shortly to the planning commission. So Dennis, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you, Alex and Megan. Again, I'm Dennis Flynn from the Gateway Engineers. Gateway has performed an initial review of the land development application and conditional use application, which have been provided by the applicant. We provided our initial comment letters, which were dated January 5th. Those were provided to the Borough Planning Commission and the applicant. Just in general at this point, our review and comments at this time indicate that there is significant additional information that needs to be provided. As the applicant stated in their presentation, it is expected that there will be rounds of these comments and rounds of submission by the applicant. And with that, our comments are very preliminary in nature and primarily are stating the additional information which must be provided. Once that information is provided, additional comment letters will be submitted at that time. There are two letters, again, a conditional use letter and a land development letter referring to each of the applications provided by the applicant. The conditional use comment letter, that does reference each of the studies, which the applicant did just go over in some additional detail just now. The parking demand study and traffic impact study, which were reviewed by the Gateway engineers and our traffic engineering team. The traffic impact study, as was stated, there have been numerous submissions by the applicant and the applicant's consultant. That is currently under review by Gateway engineers on behalf of the borough, PennDOT, and the county. The most recent formal submission was in August, with comments provided in September. The applicant has provided additional information since then on a draft format basis, and that information is being reviewed. And ultimately, once the additional information and additional findings are provided, that may proceed. With that, we would expect a traffic impact study to be approved by not only Gateway on behalf of the borough, but PennDOT and the county prior to proceeding. The stormwater management plan, again, which is part of the conditional use application, was reviewed and commented on by Gateway. With that, there were, again, a series of comments, and primarily which just additional data will be required before we can actually analyze the final effects of the stormwater issues that may be caused from the proposed site improvements. Once that information is provided, again, additional comment letters will be submitted. Beyond just the additional comments from Gateway, there will be required, the applicant will be required to obtain a joint permit, which will be reviewed by both the DEP and Army Corps of Engineers, a Chapter 105 permits for any other disturbance of wetlands or streams, which will be reviewed by the DEP, as well as NPDES permits, which will be reviewed by the local conservation district. So there are a series of reviews that are involved there, but at this point, again, additional data will be required before comments can be made by Gateway or a recommendation on how to proceed. The air quality study, sound study, and lighting studies have been reviewed. Those were reviewed by some sub-consultants to Gateway, specifically sub-consultants who specialize in each of those particular fields. As the applicant stated, they are in essentially the review of the study at this point. They did mention some of the potential mitigations that would be provided, but at this point, the comments are primarily in review of the study submitted. That additional information is provided. The actual mitigation efforts can be reviewed in further detail, and comments would then be provided on that as well. The land development review letter, that does consist primarily of comments with respect to the borough code and specifically the chapters for grading, stormwater management, subdivision and land development, as well as zoning. And likewise, there are a number of comments that we have there. Currently have 8 pages of comments in regards to that, which are available. We won't, spend all of the Planning Commission's time here reading through each and every one of those comments. But as the applicant has stated, they are reviewing those comments, will adhere to them, will provide additional information, and we will have additional comments provided once that additional information is provided. If Planning Commission does have any specific questions regarding any of those items, I'm available to answer those, of course, but we do also have, I believe, representatives from each of the sub-consultants if there are particular questions regarding each of those technical aspects, as well as our traffic engineer and other specialists here from Gateway available to answer any additional questions.
Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate that summary. As we've all acknowledged, we're in a drafting, comment, redraft stage. So nothing is finalized as of yet. It's just a matter of getting through the review, commenting on it, and working together to reach a final product, which is why we're all here. I appreciate your questions. Those comment letters, I believe, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are available on the website as well. So if anybody wants to look at them, they may.
At this point, I've not made those available. They've been made available to council and to the Planning Commission. I don't have any problem, I don't think, unless the solicitor does, with us posting those online here, by the end of the week.
Not necessarily. I just wonder if maybe it makes sense, because there is we're at such a preliminary stage. There is so much additional information and revisions that we're expecting that perhaps it would be a better use of everybody's time to maybe focus on the next round when it's a little bit more manageable, when these supplemental submissions have come in at that point, to include those as part of the next meeting's packet.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Fair enough, because they are somewhat preliminary, and as well as the studies.
Megan, we have made the plans available that Hillwood has submitted, and those can be found going off of our homepage. And over time, as updates to those studies are prepared and presented to the borough, we'll try to make those available in a timely fashion.
Okay. Okay. The next part is, I guess, questions from the Planning Commission. I know I have several at this stage. Mike or Dick, do you have, we don't have any prearranged way of doing this, or anybody wanted to ask questions. If you don't mind, I'll go first with something on the traffic study. I noticed that you talked about the roundabout, and you talked about the slip off ramp of the parkway. The questions I have is also, my understanding is you may or may not use the Greensburg Pike exit. Is that correct from the site?
The new slip ramp would come off from that Greensburg Pike exit.
Right, but there's also, if you look at your drawing, you have an exit coming out of the Westinghouse facility onto Greensburg Pike as well.
Yes.
Is that going to be utilized?
Yes, that will be used.
Are there any improvements planned for that intersection?
That intersection will remain unsignalized currently in our study. There was some back and forth with the county on whether or not the 4-lane section should be restriped to have a dedicated left turn into that access. And I think the latest iteration kind of shows maybe a restriping effort on Greensburg Pike to almost be a road diet, essentially. So you'd have one travel lane in each direction and then a center turn lane. But it would just be a unsignalized intersection access point, but there would most likely be some restriping on Greensburg Pike.
Okay. And no new curb cuts or anything? You would maintain what's there in substantially the same form as there now?
I believe that access point might get shifted like 15, 20 feet, but in all intensive purposes, it'd be kind of the same access that's there now.
One additional point, Megan, the applicant will be required to receive HOPs as well for each of the improvements from either the county or PennDOT, depending on whether or not they are improvements with state roads or county roads.
Okay. And then I guess the same as for the entrance going in off of Beulah Road. Physically, will that stay pretty much right now as preliminarily designed? Is that planned to stay pretty much the way it is right now without moving any of the traffic islands or signaling devices?
That intersection will stay completely the same, although I believe the borough requested to have the equipment upgraded. And so Hillwood's accommodating that request. And so it'll be new equipment, but in the same place, and the access point will be in the same place.
Okay.
Is the floor open for questions from the audience?
Does anybody on the commission have any questions first? Going in order,
Sure.
sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. Well, that driveway that we were just talking about, I noticed that the plans show that it is going to be shifted, but there is a residential access off of that driveway. I'm not quite sure how that happened in the past, and I was wondering if some sort of provisions are going to be made to revise that access or maintain it somehow between the sound wall and the landscaping. It didn't look like it looked like it was being ignored, and I didn't know if that was. It's a minor. Well, it's one of many smaller issues, but I didn't know if it was on anybody's radar screen.
Westbrook, do you think you could speak to that, or is that something we need to just look into more?
Yeah, we would look into that, and obviously we don't want to cut someone off from their driveway if that's the only way into their site. We could work with that. Yeah.
That's what it appears, but I don't know much about it, so I just thought I'd mention it.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that the plans that have been submitted have a good bit more parking on them than the ones that we're looking at this evening in the presentation and the color presentation. Will the presentation materials be updated in the near future? Well,
yes, we'll update the presentation materials to make sure it reflects what we're submitting.
Yeah, that would be nice for people to see. There's a lot more parking in the southwest area of the site behind the Churchill Mansion's condo building, and so it looks a good bit different than what we've seen here with the color presentation.
Yeah, correct. We'll get that updated for the next one.
And I noticed that the stormwater management plans had a system. I think it was underneath that parking area that was not shown. Is that the filtration system that you spoke of?
Yes, there will be underground pipes and filtration on the north side of the site near that area. Yep.
Okay. I also noted that someone mentioned rooftop air conditioning units. I imagine there would be a whole lot of them. Was any thought given to a geothermal system for the building? Maybe not.
Tim, I don't think the MEP has gotten to that point yet on their building design.
No,
I think
not
the
yet.
civil's a little ahead of the architectural piece on it.
Correct. We haven't started that portion of the design yet, as Chris stated.
Sometimes a cooling tower is incorporated too, and that'll have an effect on the acoustical studies because it's a bunch more noise all in one spot.
Yeah, on the roof with distributed rooftop, typically works pretty well from a noise or sound standpoint. Just because of the distance of the nature of the building and having driveways around it, it's usually not that close to a property line. So that equipment is, again, relatively quiet, and the distance is the helps, as you mentioned, in having distributed units on the roof versus one point source.
I appreciate that a lot of landscaping is going to be incorporated. I'll look forward to seeing those designs, but it'll take a while to grow in. And I'm kind of curious what this will look like in the meantime, and from the views from the various streets around. Is any digital modeling being prepared? I'm curious about the building, and of course the parking structure too. And are we going to see that rooftop scape with the air handling units or the solar panels? Would be nice to have a green roof if we can see it, along with the environmental benefits. Is any of that maybe a possibility to be presented?
I haven't heard in terms of a green roof. I know from the roof, mechanical units will be screened. Looking in from the street, the way the building sits, we'll work on getting some better concept drawings on, kind of day one versus year 1 versus year 5 in terms of landscaping and, how we anticipate the building to evolve over time and what that'll look like.
Is parking planned to be on top of the garage, or is that going to be more roof with equipment?
No, for the parking deck, it would be ground plus 3 levels of parking, which would include the roof of the deck.
So there'll be parking on top with parking lot lights up high.
Correct. It would have to be lit.
Okay, that'll make a difference in how all that looks. Will the sides be screened at all, or it'll be open decks? Well, we'll look forward to hearing more about that.
That design's still evolving, so I can't say exactly what's going to look like at this point.
So are some of these roadways internal going to be, did I read correctly, there's going to be turned over to the borough for maintenance and public use?
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. The new off-ramp connection needs to be a public road per PennDOT standards. And then that section, along with the parallel section to the parkway where it comes out to Beulah, will also be public, so you have a public connection.
I see. So if I was coming from town and I wanted to get off at the Greensburg Pike exit, I could take that slip ramp, go around the parking garage, and get off at the end of Churchill Road and go down Beulah if I wanted to.
Yes.
And so will the borough be maintaining just that road?
Dennis probably has a better feel for this than I do, but I'm sure at some point the PennDOT will determine the ramp ownership will cease and it will become borough property.
Okay. Yeah, just at this moment, that was one of the comments within our letters, was that there is no delineation shown on the plans currently. So based on that, we were assuming that all would be private roads. and therefore they will need to provide in future submissions any delineation or anything that they would expect to be turned over to the borough. And at that point, that would be a further discussion kind of for the borough as well, the maintenance of those roads. But if they are borough-owned streets, they would be maintained by the borough unless an agreement is made with either PennDOT or the end user for maintaining those roads in terms of snow removal. And obviously that would be, if it were public road, it would be added to the overall road system of the borough.
That'll make for a tricky salt truck route. So in that non-developed 20 acres to the southwest, will there be more trees planted there to replace some of the ones that are going away in the developed area?
We're still working through the landscape plan, so I don't know exactly how to answer what trees will be planted where, but
it'd be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also. I was also wondering if there was any thoughts to what to do about wildlife replacement, the wildlife. Getting rid of some deer so that they don't all go in our backyards they're from getting kicked out of where they are now, for example. Well, something to think about. I just thought I'd throw it out there.
This is Megan. A question I have too is, you said in the environmental improvements that you're going to build to energy efficiency. Are you going after anything like a LEED building or anything of that, any certifications of that nature?
We're currently not going after a LEED certification for this building.
Okay. And then these traffic improvements, can you talk about the timing of those? I think there's some concern in the borough about construction traffic versus operation traffic. And, is there going to be mitigation for the construction phase of this project?
Construction of the improvements or construction of the building?
Both, and the demolition as well.
But my understanding is PennDOT and most likely the borough would require the improvements to be in place prior to the building having full occupation.
Yes. And I meant prior to that, in anticipation of the increased truck traffic for construction.
I haven't heard of any discussions regarding mitigation for the construction impacts of the improvements. I'm sure that there will be scrutiny of the MPT phasing and to try to limit, the disruption to the surrounding neighborhoods.
Will the county be giving oversight to the environmental cleanup and all the whatever's being taken out of there being safely transported away?
Yes, there will be county oversight on that. We'll need we'll need their sign off as we begin to demo the existing buildings that they've been properly remediated. In terms of the site and the soils, the intent right now is to keep all the soils on site and reallocate them appropriately throughout the site through grading. If any soils are to be hauled off site and they're contaminated, they'll have to be disposed of properly.
Is there any budget set aside to repair the roads after the construction vehicles have beat them up for a couple of years around the area on to and fro?
I can't say exactly what that budget is, but we'll have to return the site and operational condition, for all the surrounding areas.
Back to that Greensburg Pike driveway, one point that that crossed my mind, there was talk about that roadway diet. Does that mean basically that the street parking that's in that vicinity now is going to have to go away?
The extents of the roadway diet, I think, are still in flux, but the area adjacent to that driveway, I believe, is 2 full lanes each direction. I don't think there's on-street parking in that spot, and so it would be restriped and perhaps have some kind of bicycle or mixed-use path, because you'd have some extra pavement width to kind of play with. But further down, I think there's definitely some on-street parking, and so it's still in flux as to where that restriping effort would end.
Yeah, there's some parking in the vicinity, but I don't think it's only allowed part of the day, but I'm not sure the specifics. So they'll have to rethink where to put their cars. Well, there's a lot.
Yeah, one other question I have is the sewage system that you have up there is has that been studied, and is it adequate for the use that's contemplated? And you talked a little bit about stormwater, but we all know that we have some issues with Alcosan and the consent decree with them.
Mm-hmm.
So what's planned on the sewage facilities?
We've started that process, getting the signatures and routing it around the various agencies that need to get their eyes on it. We understand that is, can be up to a year process to get through each agency. But yeah, we are aware of that and are proceeding to get the approvals to permit the sanitary.
And Megan, Gateway and the borough have received the initial information for the sewage facilities planning module, so that is something that is currently under review. And as Chris mentioned, that will not only go through Gateway on behalf of Churchill, but also any other municipality that they would essentially flow through, and ultimately Alcosan.
And they will be considered an industrial user, and it should not affect any of the rates that borough residents pay. Is that correct?
As
of right now, go ahead, Chris.
It's not an industrial use, like a manufacturer that's putting industrial discharge wastewater that needs pre-treatment. In that sense, it's industrial zoning use from a wastewater standpoint. I don't believe you would, minor point, but I think it's more of a like a commercial residential type wastewater, not like manufacturing wastewater.
They will be subject to the borough's sewage tap fees and sewage rates based on water usage, as per typical to residents of the borough.
Is the plan that all storm water will remain on site and not leave site?
We do not intend to infiltrate in that manner. There will be water leaving the site. We're not drying up the creek. We'll be doing managed release to really throttle the flow back and slowly let it out over time.
Do we have a sense of what percentage of the site is impermeable now and what percentage of the site will be impermeable upon completion?
We could get that. We could get that number. I don't have it off the top of my head now.
I see some comments regarding retaining walls. Do we know where the retaining walls will be?
The retaining walls, there will be a retaining wall on the east side, parallel to Beulah Road. There will be a retaining wall on and then the site sits high from Beulah, so we have to bring a road up parallel to the parkway. And the parkway sits pretty high above us. So there'll be a retaining wall along that public road. And then there will also there'll be a retaining wall on the southwest side of the site because of the elevation change of that valley that's out there to minimize the impacts to the stream and wetlands.
So the retaining wall along Beulah Road, for example, do we know how high that might be?
Rough order of magnitude, 50 feet, plus or minus, so.
And then the retaining wall on the roadway, the public roadway within the site?
That's a little less. I believe that's on the order of maybe 20 feet or 25 feet.
But if you're on the road, you'll be looking at the face of that wall, correct? So
As you're driving, you'll see wall, and then the parkway will be sitting up above you. Yep.
And then the retaining wall on the southwest, that really won't be too observable from off-site?
The only people that will see that will be the employees, possibly at the Westinghouse facility south of us. Yep, and maybe some of the residents on Greensburg. Yep.
All right. So Mr. Metz talked about preserving some green space of 20 acres or so in the southern end of the site. Is that all? Is that southern end of the site, which right now is unimproved and I guess is going to remain unimproved, is that only 20 acres?
It's probably a minimum of 20 acres. When we get done with our design, it could be a couple acres more. Yep.
All right, but that whole unimproved area south of the development site, that will be owned by you folks, by the owner, right? Other than that separate lot one?
It would still be under common ownership, I believe. Yes. Yep. I don't think there's anticipation that it would be subdivided as its own lot.
So it'll be part of the development lot, right?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
And the plan is that it will remain unimproved, right?
Yes. Yeah. Because of the topography that it sits 100 feet below kind of where our building is living.
Mm-hmm.
And also obviously from a traffic standpoint, we're not putting any driveway or roadway to the south. Yeah, the intent is to not, and also there's no benefit to us to impact any more of the stream or wetland than we need to. So yeah, it's intended to be undeveloped.
So at the bottom of that, or at the bottom of the valley there, I guess, it is a pond now, isn't there?
There's an outlet control structure where the above ground stream goes underground and becomes sewered, I guess you'd say, where it goes under into the road sewers. Correct. So years it holds some water. Yep.
Will you be doing any improvement work to that facility, I'll call it, down there?
That's below, that's a couple 100 feet below or south of the end of our development. So I don't believe we intend to modify that area. No.
Okay. On the proposed traffic plan, I guess, I see there's 5 separate, I don't know if we call them points of entry. And we've talked about the ramp off of the parkway and the road onto Greensburg Pike and what's now the main entrance onto Beulah. What's that point 4, which is kind of the southeast corner of the property? It looks like a driveway up to the other lot. Is that what that is?
Is that the new Westinghouse driveway possibly that weaves up to their facility?
Is that what that is? That's my
Yes,
question.
yes.
That's correct.
Yep. And Tim, if you want to speak to that and what they're planning to do on that as separate from this application.
Right. Yeah. So with our proposed tenant, the Westinghouse facility that's going to remain would need its own separate access and wouldn't be able to go through our development. So the proposed access route as shown on the drawing that you referenced is the new road to access the facility with the proposed parking lot there to keep the operations separate from one another.
Is that part of your plan? Is that work part of your plan, or?
It's not part of our plan. Well, it is because it's necessary for the development to exist.
Yeah, we did provide that as a comment, as one of our comments as well, because the development of the site would then make that property non-functional anymore and would not have access to that site. So they will need to include further detail regarding that.
Right.
So will there be no way to get between the two lots?
No, the tenant requires a secured access, so it'll be separate from each other.
All right. And then what is that on the 5 traffic access points? What is point 2? What is that?
I think those are views, not traffic access points.
Correct. I was just going to say that's part of the slides where we're showing the different viewpoints into the facility.
Okay. All right. And then finally, as far as the traffic impact study approval, once you have traffic impact study approval, does that have the final plans for traffic in it? Or is there another step after the traffic impact study approval? I'm just trying to figure out what the sequence is as far as finalizing and approving the traffic access and the intersection improvements.
The traffic study will identify the proposed improvements that are needed. And typically it's just conceptual in nature. So what we're being requested to do is kind of flush it out more with details on figures. There's a whole separate process of actually preparing off-site improvement design plans, which will go through a similar review of, submitting PennDOT, county, borough will review and go back and forth. So there'll be detailed plans that will be prepared. It occurs after the study is approved, but in this case, we're kind of bleeding those two processes together a little bit and getting a start on some of those plans.
And Dick, again, that is one of the remaining comments of the of both Gateway on behalf of the borough and PennDOT. And Kyle Brown from our traffic team is on and could probably speak a little bit more to it. But essentially, we are just requesting additional information for those improvements to verify that they can fit and that they will work and are applicable before that traffic impact study can be approved, that those mitigation efforts will truly mitigate the traffic impacts. And along those lines, like Chris has mentioned, once that traffic impact study is completed and those improvements are identified, there will be HOPs and a further process of that will need to be approved again by PennDOT or the county, as well as the borough in those cases for those improvements.
Is there, as part of the traffic study, and maybe this is more of a question for you, Dennis, than Hillwood, do they include anything regarding bus traffic or pedestrian for different access to the site?
Kyle, I'll let you kind of speak to that. Kyle Brown from our office has been handling the majority of the traffic impact study along with Mike Haberman from our office.
Yeah, so the traffic impact study that they've been working through right now does not have any sort of multimodal looking at buses or pedestrians. It's primarily vehicular traffic and the impacts of vehicular traffic on the study area. While those things are not considered, they do consider the heavy vehicles of the site and existing. There's no real analysis of those particular elements. It's just a part of the analyses for the vehicular impacts.
And we have had some additional comments just in regards to the site regarding, multimodal transportation and how public transit would be utilized.
Megan had touched on this before. Do we, as a borough, do we have any control or a way to control the traffic, the construction traffic, the equipment coming and going during construction? Meaning it sounds like everything we're talking about regarding traffic is with regard to the end project here. But how do we protect ourselves against traffic problems, roadway problems arising as a result of traffic in and out of the site, both workers and construction vehicles during construction? Is there a way to protect or to control and protect the borough from impacts there?
Well,
Dick, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Gavin.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, that's certainly requiring a traffic plan or a traffic management plan subject to the borough engineer's approval as a condition of the approval would be perfectly appropriate in order to ensure that those sort of impacts do not occur. It may end up being something that's worked into the ultimate approved traffic plan itself. But if not, it's always something that can be added as an additional condition just to ensure that there's not a major disruption to the borough residents.
Yeah, and that was well put, Gavin, and I think Kyle was going to put on too. It may not be directly part of this traffic impact study that's being performed because that is ultimately looking at not just at day one, but also looking at kind of future impacts of traffic associated with the development of the site. And anything associated with kind of the demolition or construction efforts will be handled by other requests for, traffic plans or plans for the demolition and construction sequencing throughout, as was, mentioned by some other comments. That construction sequencing will need to be determined, and any of the actual construction of off-site traffic improvements, again, will be handled by HOPs and will require traffic control measures associated with those.
Yeah, and one way we can document that and lock that in is through the developer's agreement process that's issued between the borough and the developer upon approval. And then that could be one of the things that we spell out in that agreement as well.
I know that a lot of scrutiny has been given to that traffic circle and evaluating how and whether it will work and looking at some alternatives. I was wondering, we recently got a relatively nice little bus stop there, structure for people to use. And there, hopefully things will get back to normal. The park and ride there that's nearby in the church lot, I can't imagine how pedestrians are gonna cross to get to a bus stop there. And I don't know if anything's been thought about that, or maybe if there's extra parking, can we relocate the park and ride to this new facility? Discussions like that may be happening.
Yeah, Mike, there has been discussions about relocating the park and ride lot. Tim can probably chime in a little bit more on that, and also relocating that bus stop shelter to the most appropriate place to maintain access to the current Port Authority routes.
Yeah, Chris is correct. We've been in contact with the Port Authority. We don't have a solution yet, but we're working through what options are there to make sure we accommodate the bus stop.
Good.
Right now, I'm a bit overwhelmed, and I know I'll have many, many other questions as we go through this process. At this time, I'd like to open up the discussion and the floor to people who want to make public comments. Alex,
Yeah, so Megan, what we'd like them to do is to raise their hand, and as those hands are raised, we will call on them. They will unmute themselves. They will state their full name and address. Comments are only to be made by borough residents and/or taxpayers. And they are limited to 3 minutes. I will be keeping time on that. So again, I would like them to raise their hand. We will call on them. They will unmute themselves, and then they will need to state their full name and address and speak no longer than 3 minutes. And Daryl has been waiting for a long time. I've seen that hand up right away. He's been through this, I guess, so he knows what to do. So Daryl, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself? Again, name, address, and keep it to 3 minutes or less.
My name is
Excuse me, I apologize. Before Daryl jumps in, I did want to just point out for the record, Diane Law, who's a member of the Planning Commission, you probably noticed, although I know she has many, many questions and it's been killing her to stay silent. That is based on my recommendation that she, although she is certainly entitled to remain as a member and attend the Planning Commission meetings, because she will be in the role, her Borough Council role for the conditional use hearing, I've recommended that she not participate in the deliberation or ultimately the vote at the Planning Commission level. So wanted to throw that out there just so that for the benefit of the public, Diane does care very much about this development, has lots of questions, but she's just waiting for the appropriate time to ask. So sorry to interrupt there. I'll step back and we'll let Daryl proceed.
No worries, Gavin. Thank you. My name is Daryl Rubin. I live at 2407 Marbury Road. And my question is about the traffic study at the signaled intersection of Greensburg Pike with Marbury and the off-ramp at that area. With the use of the Greensburg Pike access to the site, I wonder if there's going to be any mitigation at that light.
And just for everyone's benefit, Daryl, since you're speaking first, what we do is go ahead and make your comments and your questions. They may or may not be answered by Planning Commission, by engineer, by solicitor, by myself, or by the applicant. We will record those and use those going further. If it's an easy thing to answer, we'll answer it. But what we don't do at this part of the meeting is, go back and forth. So just for all the speakers who want to make their comments, we will address those issues and we may answer them tonight or in a future meeting. And if that was not clear, I apologize for not saying that at the beginning.
And I just suggested if the developer is willing to sort of jot down these comments as we go through, and if there are some low-hanging fruit or some items that may be easy to address after we're completed with the public comment portion, perhaps we could give the developer one last go around just to try to address any of those. So, as Alex said, Daryl, if you want to go ahead, make all your comments and questions, and then this is sort of a one-way street during this time period. We'll go through all the members of the public, and then again go give the developer a crack at responding to any that are sort of easier to hit. Otherwise, they can be addressed at the future meeting when there's the resubmission is reviewed.
I have my wife here, Issa Davis, as well, and she has a question and comment about the schools and their safety.
So I just wanted to make a quick comment for consideration. Greensburg Pike already right now is a very active street, and we have two schools that are there, Woodland Hills and Pace. It's also a drop off for school buses from other school districts. And I just didn't hear anything being taken into consideration with the increase in traffic now of that ramp exiting onto Greensburg Pike. What is going to be done to ensure the safety of the kids who have to either get on the bus there or walk to and from school? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Balke, you're next on my list here.
Hey, thank you. Name's Ken Balke. I live at 2007 Hampstead Drive. Been a long time resident of Churchill Borough, and I chair the tree committee for our borough as well. I have a question and a comment. My first question is, this is really for Hillwood Development and for Dennis, and that is all of you discussed stormwater tonight. I've yet to hear any of you talking about stormwater concerns on the east face of the hill above Beulah Road. The building's very large. It's shifted very far to the east. I've already looked at the site, and I know you're gonna have to remove trees from the eastern side of the site in order to put this building and the roadway in. And then you're gonna remove trees to put in the driveway from Beulah Road to get up to the 2 Westinghouse research labs that will still be operating after this site goes operational. And I said many months ago in an earlier session that I was working at the site during Hurricane Ivan, and I personally witnessed dozens of streams coming off that eastern face down onto Beulah Road, and really very serious flooding during these heavy rains. And that was with the trees being in place. With the trees being removed, it's only going to be exacerbated. My question is, I think there has to be looking at what other things can be done to retain water from that eastern side that was not addressed in other comments. The other comment I have is that on the lower, I really appreciate you willing to leave the 20 acres of green space down on the southern side of the property. But I have a comment that probably Diane Law can help, not to ask her to give a case, but I thought that site there was also used, is identified if there was going to be fracking, we had to identify some space for fracking in the borough. And I thought that was still part of that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so I got the mayor, Paul, go ahead and lower your hand and comment.
Yes, thank you. One of my comments was about the trees, and I knew as soon as Ken started talking, he would take care of that for me. But concerning the trees was the wall that's being proposed at a 50-foot height sounds pretty daunting. I was wondering, could more trees on that site serve to cut down on that noise coming through than a wall, or how could that work in conjunction with the wall and the trees to reduce the noise all around and including the whole site? And the other thing was with the trees that were being there, the artist's rendering showed kind of some mature trees. Would mature trees be put in place as opposed to you planting a sapling now and we have to wait 20 years before it's a matured size? And that's my tree issue. The other thing was I didn't see on the design for the layout, were you thinking of any type of employee, for the employees to have a kind of a walking track around the site on that campus that could maybe accommodate residents as well? I know I see it in the RIDC Park over in Fox Chapel where they have designated lanes for people to ride their bikes, exercise during their lunch hour or whatever. So just those were my 2 comments. Thank you.
Okay, Susan Starrett. You need to unmute yourself, Susan.
Always forget. Thank you. I'm Susan Starrett. I live at 1903 Hampstead Drive. So I have a couple questions. I'll just rattle them off. The first one is, I did not see in the application any mention of how the electrical power is going to be provided to the site. And so because it's such a huge installation, I'm just wondering what kind of utility lines and what kinds of modifications to various people's property might be needed to accomplish this. So that's my first question. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see it anywhere discussed. And since it's an impact on the neighborhood, I think that's something I would suggest the Borough Planning Commission consider asking about. Air quality doesn't include impacts during construction. A big deal was made about the fact that this is an environmentally challenged site. I don't really know what that means, but if it involves soil, which I thought it did, then that means there's going to be airborne things that might be of concern. And so I really think that just the reason that was given, that it wasn't involved in the air quality report, was that it's temporary. And I don't think that should really mean that it shouldn't be considered in the air quality report. Maybe it's another report, but we need to consider the air quality as well as some other things associated with that. I can give some information on that if the Planning Commission isn't aware of why that's a problem. I'll be happy to give some papers on that. Third thing is a sound study. So here, I've been very surprised that there's been no mention of something that if you look in business journals and so on, you'll see that what Hillwood is doing is Hillwood is partnering with automated truck company called Too Simple. And in fact, there's been a lot of hiring and current hiring in the Pittsburgh area of Too Simple. So the plans that are presented as what Hillwood is going to be involved with in these joint projects are that they're going to have an integrated, automated, or maybe remote control drones, vertical aircraft, and trucks. And maybe not the first year. The first year it's going to start in Texas, and then it's going to go up into Pittsburgh. So what I would expect is that at this facility, there's eventually going to be drones and other aircraft. Now, just last month, the FAA said that Amazon wouldn't need any special permits to fly at night and over people. And so that means that an impact on our neighborhood could well be round-the-clock drones. Now, the reason that that's important is that impacts the sound study. And it also impacts the kinds of sounds that matter because it's not just decibels. And I can give the Planning Commission some papers on how drone noise affects people physiologically in a way that's not really just captured by decibels. Okay.
The 3 minutes is up.
I'm sorry, I'm not done.
Yeah.
I'll put it in a letter. Okay.
Yeah, you and I've discussed that, and that would be great for anyone who's online. We're certainly taking comments, in writing, and we'll continue to do so. I see that Jarrell has his hand up, and he'll be next. For those of you who are not sure how this works, somewhere in your screen, you should be able to see how you can raise your hand, and then we can call on you. So Jarrell, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself, and you've got 3 minutes.
Hi, thanks. Jarrell Boston, 2337 Marbury Road. And I got cut off on the meeting, so if this question's redundant, please forgive me. My first question is, does the traffic study cite specific details surrounding additional noise from increased traffic of semis off the 79A off-ramp? And then my next question is, are provisions being made to address semis missing the off-ramp from the 79A exit? I know that there's that entrance on Greensburg Pike, but right now we're not accustomed to a lot of semis coming off of that exit ramp. So just want to know what the provisions are for that. Thanks.
Megan, right now I don't see another hand up. And what we could do, there may be some of those questions the applicant might want to address, quickly. And if they're not able to, we can obviously get to them in further reports and studies.
Yeah, I will certainly give Hillwood the opportunity to respond if they want to any of these issues or questions, or, you know, as we all acknowledge, we'll be back at this next month, I believe, with further information, and perhaps you could address them at that time as well.
Westbrook or Chris Prisk, was there any questions that you want to address now, or would you rather defer till later?
I could try to hit mine real quick.
Oh, go for yours. I'll follow up.
All right, so I had any mitigation needed at Greensburg Pike and the off-ramp in Marbury. Because the direct connection from the off-ramp would go into the site, you know, we don't anticipate any vehicles at all using the existing off-ramp at that intersection. So you're going to have an increase in traffic on Greensburg Pike, but, you know, perhaps some slight signal timing adjustments, but no mitigation would be needed at that location. Another question was about issues with school safety. Again, that was brought up in the traffic study, and I think the comment also was focusing on additional traffic coming off that ramp to Greensburg Pike, which it would not be. And then there's a separate sound study, so sound isn't covered in the traffic study. And then what happens if a truck misses 79A off ramp? They could use 79B and come into the site from Beulah. That was all I had, Tim.
Great, thanks, Chris.
And then I think a couple folks hit on the renderings and the landscape plan coordination and renderings. And we can certainly present in a little more detail on that at the next meeting. The stormwater, I am very confident that we have less drainage area heading to Beulah. I don't have the number at my fingertips, but looking at my screen, I can safely say that, and we will have the number at the next meeting. And that watershed will be treated the same as any of the watersheds on the site, that we won't be putting more releasing water at a faster rate to Beulah or to the valley on the west side or to any of the watersheds. But yeah, that's a fairly easy number to pull, and we can grab that out of our report and present a figure for that, definitely. And then the construction air quality will be addressed in the latest version of the air quality study, and different mitigation measures that can be incorporated into the procedures. So I think that's it.
And just as a response or a follow-up to what Chris had mentioned, and I know Ken, you requested regarding that flow onto Beulah, that was an item that we had highlighted, an item of concern to make sure that we identified. As Chris mentioned, they are currently showing that they are decreasing the undetained flow, but we did have a comment specifically in there of trying to identify how many of the existing trees on site were being removed and how that would affect the stormwater.
We'll take a look at that, definitely.
And I think it's important to note for all the residents listening, the applicant will be required to design for a storm event. Hurricanes or exceptional 100, 200-year storms would overwhelm a storm event design that would be required. So I don't think the borough or the applicant would say that there would be a rain event in the future that you wouldn't see water come off the site. I think it's just not possible. And we've seen that over the last few years. We've seen massive storms that have overwhelmed even highly developed stormwater control systems, but they will be required to design for a storm event and meet that threshold and not increase flows off of the site for that event. They're not going to be required to design something that would prevent any storm event to be kept on site and feel, and mitigated. So that I just want to be clear enough, because I know stormwater is a sensitive issue, and we've really experienced some localized flooding because of 100-year storms that seem to occur every year.
Yeah, and again, to that point, it is a the review will be performed to the borough's stormwater ordinance that was adopted, I believe 2 years ago, which was part of the overall county stormwater ordinance that was provided. And again, the applicant will be required to go through MPDES reviews, as well as permit reviews through other regulatory agencies, in addition to the review that will be performed by us as well.
Do we know whether the existing stormwater is being properly removed, as opposed to maybe discharged improperly, in creating like what Ken recalls seeing with flows over that heavily wooded hillside, which is hard to imagine if everything is going into collection systems?
The current site was designed and permitted in an era before any stormwater requirements were like they are now. And moreover, the site has not been maintained or maintained that you would expect to see a stormwater control system to be maintained. And certainly Dennis or Gavin can comment on that, but the regulatory environment of stormwater is a lot different today than it was 50 years ago when that site was being developed. And I would assume that, again, the control standards are a lot higher and the design standards are more than there would have been in the past.
There was no accommodation back 30, 40, 50 years ago, correct, for stormwater quantity or quality. Yep.
And again, they will be required to meet all new standards, and that those are referenced within our initial review. And once the additional information is provided, any additional comments will be provided to ensure that they are meeting those standards.
We've seen lots of different culverts being replaced around the area, having reached, I guess, end of life 50 years ago. I guess they thought they would last forever, but it might be a good idea to take care of the culvert that at least starts off on this property now, as opposed to later, while you're doing all that stuff, as opposed to relying on a 50-year-old culvert opening to last another 100 years.
Good point, Mike. And I again, something that we do have, we wanted to make sure that we identified as well within our comments to evaluate the downstream connection points as well.
Thank you.
Megan, Tom Morellis has his hand up. I would like to permit him an opportunity to speak.
Sure.
Go ahead, Tom.
You hear me?
Yes.
Not now. Tom, I think you're.
Tom, you're muted again.
Oh, am I on now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. I could only back up what Mike Moitra and Rich Kelly have said. There's some good comments there. My concern is still with the traffic. I think more work needs to be done there. I'm having dealt with roundabouts, I sort of question the scale of the one that's there, and then also the access from William Penn Highway onto the Parkway West. Had an incident this week where I was behind an 18-wheeler who took up both lanes there. When he finally got to do the turn, he took out part of the sign that's along there. So I think some better looking needs to be done at that part of the traffic study. The other question is, with all this traffic work, who's paying for this? Yeah, I know PennDOT and their tips is beyond this. Who's coming up with the money to pay for the PennDOT work? I don't expect you to answer right now, but it's a question that I think we need to deal with. The land that is not being used, it was hinted to with some of the people tonight. Can we give consideration that that might be more public use land? I'm familiar with that site and know that, is there a possibility that the borough can acquire some park space in that undeveloped land as well? I think related to the planting, I think one of the issues we deal with there is somebody better be ready to maintain this. Planting is good the day you put it in, but it's no good 2 years later if you don't maintain it. So there needs to be some thought put into how does this all get maintained. Last, the building wise, I would guess you'd want to go for some rating in a green building. I'm glad to hear that solar panels are being suggested, but I think that it would be a plus for the borough. It would be a plus for Amazon, be a plus for whoever is developing the site if the building was more green oriented. But other than that, I think we're making progress. I would say that all this discussion that we have, it would be important to get it in writing and share it with all of us so we know that the discussions here are moving forward in the right direction. With that, I just can say thank you.
Okay. Is that it, Alex, for folks that
I don't
have
see
had
anyone
this?
else with a hand up, so it's back to you.
Okay, at this time, we'll conclude that portion of our meeting. Then the next is the action items. Consideration of the conditional use application filed by Churchill Creek Project LLC. And we need a motion by the Planning Commission to either approve, table, or deny the conditional use application at this point. Does anybody want to make the motion and second?
Make a motion, we table it at this point.
Okay. I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand, I guess, since we're Zooming. Sorry, I'm used to in-person meetings. All right, so that has been tabled. The next is the consideration of the land development application filed by Churchill Creek Project LLC. We could either have a motion to approve, table, or denial. Do I hear a motion from the Planning Commission?
I make a motion, we table that one too.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That's it for the consideration for tonight. The next steps, the process going forward is we have another meeting planned 4 weeks from tonight. We can do potentially more consideration at that time. That would give Hillwood an opportunity to respond to some of Gateway's comments on the letter, recognizing that those letters just went out yesterday, so they have not had an opportunity to digest them in any detail. So unless pushed otherwise for a special meeting, the next meeting will be 4 weeks from tonight.
The only thing I'd add, Megan, if I could, just from a timing standpoint, maybe just for the public, maybe more so, I think the planning commissioners have already discussed this. I think council is aware, but the timing for the conditional use application, Borough Council is required to hold its public hearing with 2 weeks prior notice, or actually 1 week prior notice, but an ad that runs twice, and that's got to be initiated 60 days from the date the application is received. I've had some preliminary discussions with the applicant's counsel, Mr. Metz, and I'm hoping that the applicant will consider in the near future a written extension of that deadline, because that, as of right now, that would put us in the middle of February to start that hearing. And I think based on the way things went tonight, and it's not a surprise to anybody, but that there's going to be some additional time needed for Hillwood to supplement its application, to address some of the comments, et cetera. So that's the one sort of time frame or deadline we're working off of right now. The other is the land development application, and that must be acted on by council within 90 days of today. So day one will be tomorrow. And that one, obviously, we have a little bit more time on. And, you know, again, we hope that we're able to cooperate with Hillwood as this process moves forward. If it's teed up and ready to go, certainly within that time period, great. If not, you know, we may be requesting some additional time on that, just to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Agreed. We don't expect Hillwood to respond tonight, but that is certainly what's being contemplated. Okay, no other business before the Planning Commission. I am adjourning the meeting. Thank you all for attending. And again, as Alex said, we are more than happy to take your comments in writing if you're a little shy doing them on the Zoom call, so please feel forward to forward them in. Thank you very much for your time and attention, all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.